Good morning, Rosemarie.
Morning, Mary. Good to see you.
Good to see you. And we're going to welcome our viewers to our fourth podcast on the road to homeownership. I think this is pretty exciting because this is an exciting day. I am Mary Tracy with the Self Improvement Headquarters, and I have Rosemarie Ashley with Legacy Mortgage and with more than 30 years of experience in the mortgage business, which I think is important to point out because that's a
Let's
business.
go with just decades these days.
That's a business that you do often find a lot of newbies in,
Yes.
so I think it's important for, people to recognize that there is an experience level that, really can be of assistance. And so in our first podcast, I believe we discussed knowing your finances and working with a mortgage originator such as yourself to identify and to create that pre-approval letter that's authentic and not just an estimate based on some calculation on the internet. And in podcast two, we talked about choosing your buying agent. And, a lot of people, and I kind of want to hit this one again. A lot of people go, well, I thought you should choose your real estate agent first. And I want you to just real quickly address that one.
If you choose a real estate agent first, let's say you know somebody, you've been working with them. What they're going to do before they start showing you houses is have you get pre-approved. And I mean, that's the responsible thing for them to do. I mean, real estate agents all have kind of an unspoken rule that you don't show people houses that aren't qualified to buy them. So that's a big important thing.
Right. Well, I think it's important to, and this was something for me. I think it was important for us to have an understanding of our finances and how much we could actually uh, use to purchase a house,
Yeah.
because that way, because I had a pre-approval letter,
Mhm.
but it wasn't a good pre-approval letter.
Right.
It
That's
was it
how-
was a, pre-approval letter, and we'll give you $200,000. And then when it came down to what was in my value, what was where we wanted to be financially, we didn't want to go over 100,000.
Right.
That was a huge difference,
Sure.
you
Well, I
know?
mean, and that's the importance of a pre-approval to get your expectations reasonable, to narrow your search, like we talked about last week. You have to know, like I said, even if you go to a real estate agent first, they're going to direct you to a lender.
Right.
And they're going to direct you to a lender that they feel comfortable with. And they have all sorts of relationships with lenders. Some still refer lenders because of the expertise and service. And if you don't have if you have the loan officer getting the pre-approval can make a huge difference on whether your offer is accepted. I mean, when the listing agents call
Mhm.
and ask about my pre-approval letter. Now, no pre-approval letter is a guarantee for financing.
Right.
It doesn't matter if it's gone through underwriting, it doesn't matter. It's not a guarantee of financing. So the level of pre-approvals kind of varies with who you're working with. Lenders don't want to spend a lot of extra money working on pre-approvals that don't end up closing. So it's just a give and take thing. But if you no matter what, even if you go to your real estate first, they're going to refer you or ask you to get a pre-approval before they can show you houses. So, I mean, who to go to first? It depends. If you know a lender, if you know a real estate agent, if you've got personal referrals that have good experiences, it doesn't matter, but you're still going to end up at the lender first. I
Okay.
mean, before you look at houses.
Absolutely. And then on podcast three, again, you talked about what we were looking for in a house. And so
That's the fun
today,
part.
today in this podcast, we're actually going to be taking that pre-approval letter and we're going to be putting in an offer. on a house, and we're gonna go
Yay!
through all of that. So, and I think the most important thing for me was having that pre-approval letter from you in hand. And I say from you because again, I had that one that was absolutely bogus. And the reason it was so important for us was because one, it was within what we thought we could afford monthly in our payments. And two, it was it was based on the documentation we provided you and um more authentic than what we had been given. So
You had put that same information into a computer and you would have pressed, the button. It could have come back as pre-approved if you weren't.
exactly.
If you weren't gonna
Exactly.
use it
And it
for
wasn't, we actually were working with a realtor and a lender at that point.
Mhm.
And we backed away from them and said, because we kind of felt a little bit pressured, and we backed away from them and rethought what we were looking for and what we wanted to do. And I think it's important, we live in a time where people want to be self-sufficient.
Mhm.
And so I think it's important for people to understand the entire process that they're going to need to go through. And that's what we're really going to talk about today, is that this is the most important processes that we have. So we've got that pre-approval in hand. We're going to, go with the real estate agent that we find that is going to meet our needs the best. And or that we feel is going to meet our needs the best. And we're going to look at the price range that we've decided is in our best interest. And we understand there's going to be taxes and insurance and closing costs, possibly costs to repair. So let's go ahead. We're going to get started. um, we found our perfect house. We love it. It's great. And now we want to put in the offer. So, the first thing I think we need to do is to check with our loan officer and make sure that our loan officer knows our realtor's information and that the realtor knows our loan officer's information so that there can be a coordination of work, because sometimes it can get really weird if they're not working together. I'm just going to say that.
Well, let me give you a couple examples. A couple found me through a friend of theirs and they chose their own real estate agent, which is fine. I said, just give the real estate agent my information, ask him to give me a call. And the real estate agent on the other end was telling them, let me talk to your lender. Let's make sure we're all on the same page. And so we started talking and he told me his concerns, which were also my concerns. The customer has a house to sell. Okay. But they want to look at houses before their house is on the market, which means at best, we talked about this last week or the week before, they could only put it in an offer contingent on the sale or close of their house.
Yes.
So we were talking about different programs, bridge loans that might help, but a lot of the ways to do things, you got to get prepared for in advance. So he and I are communicating, we're on the same page. The ultimate goal for him is obviously to sell their current residence and to sell them a new one. And mine is to help them buy a new one with the financing. So we all have the same goals. That's key to understanding things, because when the realtor goes out and shows them a house, they're going to want to make sure they're qualified for that particular house that they want to buy. So I give you a pre-approval. It's based on a $250,000 sale price. Okay. That $250,000 sales price in one neighborhood you might qualify for, but in another neighborhood you won't, because of what you mentioned before, taxes and insurance. So it's like, okay, so hey, Rosemarie, we're going to put in an offer on this house. the taxes are higher than you estimated, okay? Because we're going into this neighborhood instead of this. Now, do we still qualify? Well, you know, what I like to do is get them qualified for the max amount, so then I can look into it and find out, yes. But and then there's another customer of mine, found her own agent, and he and I were working together in negotiating the deal. Okay, what can she do here? What can she do here? What can they do here? Can we do this? Can we do this? How long it'll take? We're working together, and then we get crunch time. Are we going to be able to close this? What can we do? Da, 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 da. The communication, you can lose a deal. The buyer, seller, agents, everybody can lose a deal without that communication, because what's going on in somebody's head if they don't talk to them is like, oh my God, what's going on? Oh, am I going to lose this deal? I mean, the seller, are they going to be able to buy this up? All that stuff's going on in their head. Now, it's something I was thinking about earlier. The value of the people you're working with when you're talking about expertise and service is most acutely measured when it's lacking. And what I mean by that, somebody's going out looking for a house tonight. They want to put in an offer. What if the listing agent has 4 or 5 offers? Totally typical. The agent has 4 or 5 offers. They're going to be taking a look at these pre-approval letters. These pre-approval letters sometimes aren't worth the paper they're written on. But the good part about it is they have a phone number on it. And listing agents, when they do their due diligence, they call the loan officer to find out what's going on with the file. Like one of the realtors I was talking about just a minute ago, he was asking me about the level of pre-approval, and I told him, well, they're not really ready to buy a house now. So what I've done was I've gathered all the information. I've run an initial credit report. I didn't run the full one because those are only good for 4 months. And so far, I've already been working with this customer 5. Okay.
Wow.
The more credit reports, the more hits on your credit. And, you know, the more expensive it ultimately ends up being for the customer. So we're talking about what's going on. And I said, listen, I don't have a full-fledged pre-approval. I've looked at their credit. It's excellent. I've looked at their documents. And I said, I'll tell you what, my pre-qualification is better than a lot of lenders' pre-approval. And so I sent him over the pre-qualification, which detailed all the stuff I did. And he's like, I like your pre-qual, because that lets people know. So a listing agent calls me up and says, okay, I'm looking at a contingent offer here, but how solid are these customers? I mean, their house is probably going to sell quickly, and I'm not in that much of a rush, and I'm thinking about it because it's the best offer. But, you know, how solid are they? Well, they're this solid, and this is what I'm going to do after you accept the purchase agreement. We're going to get it all ready. We're going to disclose it. We're going to have it sent to them. Yes. And I think it's good. Now, that level of confidence, it doesn't take an experienced agent very long to figure out if their loan officer knows what they're talking about. I mean, you can tell within 30 seconds, you know, it's just like, you can tell by what they're saying, how they're saying it. And that makes a difference whether or not the deal is going to go a lot of times, because the sellers want certainty. And that's the whole thing in this market. Do you want, the more certainty you can get, the easier it is in the very stressful time of buying a house. Let's get all this handled. And when we get it handled, then things go smoothly. I mean, things can still upset the apple cart, but then again, you've got the expertise and service in your corner working for you between the agents and the lender and the title company and the inspectors and the appraisers and everything.
And I think that's really important. You know, a lot of times we don't know what we're getting into until we're into it. And so, you know, just having that expertise. We had a fairly new real estate agent when we purchased this house, and we had a very experienced loan originator. And if we would not have had that experience with the loan originator that he had to go back to our real estate agent and ask for things, ask questions, and get things moving. And he directed that. Now, if we didn't have that, there would have been a problem. There would have been things that fell through,
Mhm.
over and over again, because that level of expertise and the coordination between your real estate agent and your loan officer is so very, very key. Like you said, to having a smooth transaction or a smoother transaction. 'Cause I don't know that they're ever really smooth, you know, but it definitely gives that foundation. So that's, I think the key to the looking for a home and the getting, especially for first time buyers, is having a loan officer and a real estate agent that you trust and that will work together for your best interest. And that is, I think that's really key. So we checked with our loan officer. We've shared them our realtor information. And now we want to negotiate the best offer on this house. And so one of the things that we need to look at is who is going to pay the buyer agent fee and who's going to pay the homeowner's insurance, the title insurance too.
I think that probably varies by state. I know in Michigan, typically the sellers pay for the owner's policy, owner's title insurance policy. And the owner's title insurance policy is what guarantees to the buyer that they will have they will be entitled unencumbered by people that used to live in the house or relationships of people that used to live in the house. There'll be no claims. If there are claims, the title company will handle it.
Mhm.
And the buyers pay for the lender's title insurance policy, which is less expensive than the owner's policy. It only covers the lender. But I was working on a condo last week before, and condominium have homeowners associations. And I think we spoke about that. They have a bunch
Yes.
of laws. They have a bunch of the way things work. The condo association handles the outside and the owners are responsible for the inside. But there's also things like litigation that could be against the homeowners association that could adversely affect our borrower's financial position. And there was something on the title. I don't read all the details. That's what the underwriter does. I focus on the borrower credentials. But in the title commitments, the underwriter found some language that was a little bit, concerning. It was about some litigation and about a judgment and about a lease that needed to be in place. So the underwriter requested additional information, and apparently it was about a lawsuit, some kind of judgment that happened in the 1990 something. And okay, well, it was on an exception of the title work, which means the title guarantees the lender's going to have their first lien position firm, except maybe this judgment. And the lender's like, no, no,
Oh, yeah.
we're not going to. And oh, well, that judgment's already been handled 20, 30 years ago. Okay, well, let's take it off the exception list. So in that doesn't directly protect the buyer, but that protects the lender. And that's also in the buyer's best interest. So all these little details have to be worked out through the title agents. We have to communicate with the title agents. When can we close? Can you get this? All of that is very important.
Which is, when you're making an offer, usually you kind of throw in a closing by date.
Yes, you do.
And so it's really important to know, how long is this going to take me to close? And I remember we had a 4-week window. We needed to close within that 4 weeks.
Mhm.
And that was like not doable. It was absolutely not doable. And
That's part of
so,
the negotiation strategy. How
yeah,
fast do the sellers want to get out? So, and that's what you talk to your buyer's agent. You know, if you negotiate, another one I did a couple months ago, the listing agent called and she said, the purchase agreement says that she asked me some questions. It was a down payment assistance, yet it was, or no, it was a MISHDA, which is a lower interest rate through the state of Michigan. But he had a very large down payment. She's like, well, why are we doing the MISHDA with the large down payment? Well, in that case, the interest rate was 2% better on the MISHDA than it was on a standard conventional. It was a no-brainer. That's why. And she
Mm-hmm.
says, so are you going to be able to close in 30 days? I said, possibly, but not really likely. And in that particular deal, the state agency, the Michigan Housing Agency, had a 2-week turnaround time. So we gave them to underwrite. We processed the loan faster, okay? We got an appraisal, we got title work, we got documents, we got underwriting commitment. And they took 2 weeks. And so, listing agents, so we're gonna close on time. I'm like, they got a 2-week turn time. So I don't think so. But the thing is, she knew it up front.
Right.
She knew it up front, so she had time to prepare her seller. Okay. And then it didn't happen. I mean, it happened within the seller's needs. Okay. But it didn't happen within the purchase agreement. They negotiated 30 days, but the listing agent knew right then. I didn't think it was real likely we're going to close in 30 days because you got 30 days on your purchase agreement. Then what's the next thing you do? A home inspection.
Yes.
So
Usually
before
within a week.
usually you got a week. So 25% of the processing time is often consumed in the inspection and renegotiations. So
Mhm.
and not saying you can't do it in 30 days. I mean, okay, so let's say I got 7 days of the contract, 25% of the contract time is tied up in negotiations. Okay, so now I have the rest of the time to get the appraisal, get the title work, finalize all the information. And that could certainly be doable if you've got a solid pre-approval. And in this case, we go directly to my company. We don't have to go to another, to the state afterwards.
Right.
I mean, in that case, the state had 3 days off. It was like November. So it was a holiday, Veterans Day, I believe. And then they had Thanksgiving. We had 2 days off. I'm like, they had 2 business days off. They don't make up for it. So it took longer. We did get it closed. Everybody was happy. Okay. But the point of the matter is, if the lender doesn't, ghosts everybody because they're getting bombarded. Can we close? Can we close? Can we close? Like, I never told you could close,
Right. Right. And putting that into the contract, there is, if you don't close by X amount of date, then you could lose out.
I had that happen on a deal. Well, I didn't lose the deal, but that again, they gave a 30-day close date. They took 25% of that time. But the thing is, the customer wasn't even pre-qualified in this case. I mean, the seller was motivated because I had not yet pre-qualified the customer. And then when I got the paperwork, calculating income in that particular case was outside of the standard guidelines. And the only way I could make that deal work was if the underwriter, in their discretion, was willing to make an exception to standard. And they can do that. They have some discretion there. They have to give a good, and it's hard to do sometimes, especially after COVID with hourly workers. How do you average income? It gets very difficult. But in that case, they accepted an offer. Customers weren't pre-qualified yet, so I hadn't sent out even any letter. And then we got them qualified, and then we got it done. But it was down to the 11th hour, and they wanted to close by contract date. And I was telling them, we've got these little things and a couple things we got to handle. And I explained to the buyer's agent that the borrower conditions have all been cleared. Underwriter cleared income, underwriter cleared credit, underwriter cleared assets. We were waiting on some information more regarding the collateral and compliance issues. Well, that communication you talked about, that wasn't there as comprehensively between the listing agent and the seller, because then the listing agent started getting nervous because they accepted an offer on a customer that wasn't pre-qualified yet. And so they started getting nervous. And so the seller had the idea that the customer wasn't going to get approved. Well, the listing agent gave the seller my phone number, and I got a call at 9 o'clock at night one night on the last day of the contract. And she said, well, I don't want to extend this if the buyer's not going to get approved. I'm like, no. And I explained, it's already been through underwriting, borrower conditions were removed. We're just doing some things for compliance issues. And the borrower, I have no reason to believe they won't close by the end of the week. It's just, I need some more days because we had this going on and that going on. And within a minute of hanging up with me at 9 o'clock at night, boom, we had that extension. So that's how, I mean, and then I don't normally talk to sellers. Okay. In this case, I think the listing agent was kind of frustrated because she wasn't sure. Because she didn't see the file. She obviously doesn't know. And I didn't know the listing agent. If I knew the listing agent, then I would have said, listen, they're fine. Give me a couple more days. I got to tie up some loose ends.
Right.
And, but the agent didn't have that confidence. And in frustration, I think, gave my phone number out, which turned out to make the deal work, you know?
Right. And I think that's so important
Yes.
is, understanding that we had a, offer on a house, and our real estate agent, the listing agent, had 2 backup offers for us
Mhm.
because, um, you know, we wanted this house sold, and we wanted it sold in a specific amount of time. And it didn't look like that the buyer was going to be able to close within that time. And so we had a backup cash offer, and then we had a backup offer that was a financed offer. And I think that's important to understand when you're putting in an offer on a house, that there are other people who may be backed up on that house. So you got to make sure that you've got all that communication going on and that everything is working out. And just as you said, you need someone who can negotiate, or if they're going to drop the ball, get that lender involved so that there is, connection, because it's important that the selling agent and the listing agent and the loan officer have all of that information, because if you don't file that extension, you lost that.
Mhm.
You've lost
You
that,
could lose the house. Exactly.
and that's pretty that would be pretty heartbreaking.
Well, not only the heartbreaking part of it, the money that you spent for the inspection, the money you spent from the appraisal, that money's gone.
Right.
It's already spent. You don't get it back.
What about your earnest money?
You'll get that back generally. I mean, unless you back out of the deal, but yeah, if generally purchase agreements are worded so that if a customer gets denied or if they don't close, they get it back unless they do something
But
like.
it is in that contract.
Mhm.
So sometimes you got to read your contract, because in our case, if we would have said, no, she can't have an extension, she would have lost her earnest money to us.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah. Because we specifically had that in the contract. We did not want to mess with people. If they weren't going to close, and if they weren't sincere, you know, and so that, yes, you really do have to read your contract.
And that, usually they get the earnest money deposit, but that, like you said, that's very important. But in your case,
Mhm.
if you would have had to take it off the market and resell it, even if it was cash and you had backup offer, that's still going to take a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Whereas if you were able to talk to the lender and you were convinced that the lender is telling you the truth,
Mm-hmm.
2 days is going to be faster
Right.
than maybe accepting the backup offer, which isn't as much money or whatever, for whatever reason you accepted the first one.
Right.
So, and that's kind of a game. I mean, basically, yes, people want to close when they want to close. Sometimes you have multiple offers,
Mm-hmm.
stacking up, multiple deals stacking up after that. Sometimes you just need a place to live, there's a lot of reasons, but sometimes the best idea is to extend it for a few days, or sometimes the best idea, but it all depends, like you said, on the communication. That seller was getting the idea the buyer wasn't qualified. I shut her down right there. No, they're already approved through the underwriter, income, assets, credit, all approved. We're working on nitpicky details. And it turns out the seller is a loan officer too. So the seller knew what I was talking about. I'm like, no, we're doing these are compliance things.
Yeah, that is so good when you've got all that communication going on, because that's the most important thing to any deal, is that communication. And the level of communication between your loan officer and your listing agent or your buying agent is key to making sure that things run smoothly. And of
Because
course, like
there's
you
some
said,
things.
the inspection, the appraisal, the mortgage approval sale, the close, on current residents, all those things factor in.
Yeah.
And I mean, we had to be out by X day, or we had to pay, for each day, we had to pay a certain amount of money. And we didn't want to do that, we wanted to get out by that particular day, because who wants to pay, X amount of money, just because they're waiting.
I had a lot of my customers are on my Facebook friend list, and I had one of those memories that popped up, and it was the customer saying that she retold a story that I had forgotten. She said, yeah, they wanted us to close by such and such a date. And there was a bunch of work that needed to be done. I don't know if it was repairs. There was something that needed to be done. They asked me if they could close, and I'm like, yeah, that's not likely. And it turned out they were going to be homeless for a period of a couple of weeks. So I don't remember the details. I don't remember I remember the customers, the repeat customers. But I don't remember the details. But the Facebook memory came up, and it said she's kept us from being homeless. And I don't know what I did. I pulled some strings. I talked to some people. I don't know what I did, but I got them so they weren't homeless for 2 weeks.
And that's really important.
Remembered it and appreciated it and comes back because that made a difference
Yes.
to them in their life.
Yes, absolutely. Well, we are running out of time for our first section here, so I'm going to go ahead and say goodbye for a few minutes, and we'll be back.
Okay.
I choose now.